The first strike was not with weapons, but with words. The Galaxy Council, the so-called Guardians of Peace, announced that humanity had broken its promises, that Earth had crossed lines written in old treaties. But what shocked us more was not the accusation. It was the punishment. Trade routes shut down, alliances dissolved overnight, and fleets that once stood beside ours turned their cannons away. To the galaxy, it looked like justice. To us, it was betrayal. And in that betrayal, the spark of war was lit. Humans had always been the outsiders, the upstarts who rose too fast. We were tolerated but never truly welcomed. Our technology advanced in leaps. Our colonies stretched across stars that others thought too distant. Some envied us, others feared us, but all had watched closely. When the Council declared us guilty, it gave every rival an excuse to act. Worlds that once sent us grain now sent threats. Fleets that had trained with ours now patrolled our borders. In that silence, we felt the noose tightening. Yet humanity is not known for surrender. What the galaxy forgot is that our history is forged in struggle. From the deserts of old Earth to the frozen moons of Europa, we had always endured. Now, stripped of allies, facing impossible odds, humanity looked inward. Generals convened, leaders debated, and citizens stood ready. Still, hesitation lingered. A single command could tip us into total war, but once given, there would be no return. The Council underestimated how humans think. They believed sanctions would weaken us, that isolation would force us to beg for mercy. Instead, it hardened us. The very blockade meant to starve our colonies drove innovation. New weapons, new tactics, new resolve. Every hardship forged steel in our people. But still, one question hung heavy. When to strike back? And who would dare give the order? Among the fleets, whispers spread of betrayal not only from the Council but from within. There were those in human ranks who argued for submission, to bend and survive. Others spoke of vengeance, of teaching the galaxy why humanity should never be crossed. Tensions rose, loyalties split, and every hour the Council tightened its grip. Then came the day when the waiting ended. One command, clear and cold, rang across every channel of our defense networks. That command changed everything. Ships powered up weapons once kept idle. Engines roared awake in hidden shipyards. Colonies that had hoarded supplies suddenly opened their arsenals. It was not just an order. It was a declaration that humanity would not kneel. But with that choice came danger greater than ever before. The Council had labeled us rebels. Now they would treat us as enemies. Entire armadas were already moving, and their size dwarfed anything Earth could muster alone. Still, there was something the galaxy did not understand. Humanity's strength has never been in numbers but in will. The command did not unite only soldiers, but farmers, workers, scientists, and families. Across every colony, messages poured in. We will fight. We will endure. That unity terrified the Council because they had hoped we would break. Instead, we had become more dangerous than ever, but the cost was already mounting. Supply lines stretched thin, outposts cut off, worlds left vulnerable. Every victory threatened to become a trap. Every step forward risked collapse. And yet humans pushed on, testing new weapons, executing daring raids, striking where the Council least expected. Some whispered of a new kind of warship, built in secret, capable of turning battles with a single strike. Whether rumor or truth, its name alone sent ripples of fear through the stars. Still, betrayal leaves scars. Trust was shattered, not just with the Council, but with those who once called themselves allies. Humans now looked at every neighbor with suspicion. Old friendships seemed fragile, every treaty a trap waiting to be sprung. What if the betrayal went deeper? What if the Council's command was not the true danger, but only the beginning of a larger plan? Questions swirled, but answers remained hidden, and so the war began, not with a single battle, but with a choice. Humanity stood alone, but not weak. Our enemies were many, but their unity was shallow. All it took was one command to turn our despair into fury. The galaxy thought it had cornered us, but now it faced a force it could not control. The Council believed betrayal would end us. They were wrong. It only awakened something far more dangerous. And as the first fleets moved into position, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the fire that was about to come. What none could see, not even humanity itself, was how deep this war would cut, how far it would spread, and how one hidden truth could still twist everything once again. Because betrayal, once started, has a way of multiplying. And before the galaxy could understand what it had unleashed, humanity was already preparing the response that would shake every world to its core. The question was not if we would fight. That was already decided. The question was what we would become when the fighting was done. Would humanity rise as the new power among the stars, or burn everything, including itself, to ash? The answer was waiting, locked behind the next battle, the next betrayal, the next impossible choice. And as the command echoed through the fleet, the future of the galaxy trembled on the edge of war. The order had been given, but its echo was still settling across human space. No one forgot the moment. Men and women who had waited in silence felt their blood rise when the signal came through. On Earth, in the orbital stations, and in the farthest colonies, people stood frozen for a heartbeat, then moved with a sudden certainty. Factories switched production lines, cargo ships became armored transports, and hidden hangars released machines that had never before seen the light. Humanity had stepped into war, but the reasons for it ran deeper than most knew. Long before the betrayal, humans had been warned that the Galaxy Council's tolerance was fragile. Whenever Earth pushed a boundary, whether a new weapon, a new colony, or a mining claim too close to another world, voices in the Council whispered about balance and control. Humans listened, nodded, and carried on anyway. It was not arrogance alone. It was survival. Other species had their empires, their long histories written in thousands of years. Humanity was young compared to them, and young races either grew quickly or disappeared. Growth was not a choice, it was a law written in the stars. But there was another truth few admitted. The Council had never trusted humans, not from the first moment Earth claimed a seat among them. They had seen the wars of Earth's past, the endless rise and fall of nations, and they had seen how humans fought not just with weapons, but with fire in their spirit. The Council thought that spirit was dangerous. Some admired it, but many feared it. Fear, once planted, never dies easily. Inside human leadership, debates had torn at unity long before the command. Some leaders wanted compromise, even surrender, believing that survival depended on obedience. Others, often from the colonies farthest from Earth, argued that freedom was worth the risk of extinction. Those colonies had lived with hardship, building cities on frozen rocks or under poisonous skies. They had little patience for diplomacy with species who had betrayed them at the first chance. Among the fleets, officers carried their own doubts. Some still had friends among alien crews, friendships built through years of patrols and shared dangers. How could they now raise weapons against them? Others had no hesitation, remembering how quickly those same friends turned their backs when the Council declared its judgment. The weight of betrayal pressed on every conversation, every choice. No one knew who could be trusted, and still whispers persisted of something more than betrayal. Some believed the Council had not acted out of fear alone. There were rumors of secret resource finds near human colonies, rare materials used in advanced star drives and energy weapons. Perhaps the Council had used accusations as an excuse, masking greed with law. Others spoke of an ancient power, hidden deep in human-controlled space. Something older than the Council itself, something the galaxy wanted silenced. No proof had ever surfaced, but the rumors spread faster than truth, carried from one frightened colony to another. On Earth, life changed overnight. Families who had once dreamed of peace now drilled in shelters, learning survival routines. Children whispered about fleets in the sky while their parents worked longer hours in factories or labs. Scientists pushed forward designs that had once been rejected as too dangerous. What had been theory yesterday became weapon today. The Council had thought to weaken humanity, but instead it had unlocked an energy no one could contain. Still, not everyone believed war would save them. In the underground cities of Mars, a movement grew, arguing that humanity should split. Let Earth fight if it wished, they said, but colonies should cut ties and survive alone. Others went further, claiming that the Council was right, that humanity's ambition had invited destruction. These voices were not silenced, for humanity's strength had always come from its arguments as much as its unity. But their presence deepened the unease, reminding everyone that war was not just against the Council, but within themselves. In orbit above Jupiter, a new fleet was forming. The ships were smaller than Council warships, but built with speed and precision. Crews were young, many barely trained, but their determination burned hotter than fear. They spoke often of the first battle to come, not knowing where it would strike, only that it was inevitable. Every night they stared out at the storms of Jupiter, wondering if they would live long enough to see them again, and in the dark between stars, something else stirred. Human scouts reported glimpses of vast fleets moving in silence, Council ships massing in numbers too great to count. But some reports did not match Council formations. Strange signals, unfamiliar drives, shadows that vanished when pursued. Were these allies to the Council, mercenaries hired in secret, or something entirely different? No one could say. The unknown was its own weapon, and it gnawed at every commander's mind. Behind the strategy and fear, there were still people. A pilot writing letters home but never sending them. A commander staring at the names of those under his charge, knowing how many would be crossed out before long. A scientist watching her invention leave the lab, unsure if it would save lives or end too many. In every corner of human space, lives turned upside down by betrayal, now braced for the weight of choices none had wanted. The Council thought war would be swift. They believed humanity would collapse under pressure, torn apart by fear and doubt. But what they did not see was the stubborn fire running through human history. A fire that had burned through every disaster, every fall, and every betrayal. It was that fire the command had unleashed, and once lit, it could not be controlled, and yet beneath the fire, shadows grew. If betrayal had come once, it could come again. Among the fleets, among the leaders, among the very voices calling for unity, who could truly be trusted? Humanity prepared for war, but deep inside, a darker question remained. Was the greatest danger outside, in the Council's fleets, or inside, waiting to strike when humanity least expected it? The stars gave no answer. Only silence stretched across the void, heavy and endless, as if holding secrets too vast for words. And as humanity prepared to fight back, that silence seemed to whisper a single warning. The true betrayal had only begun. The first sparks of the war began not with a massive clash, but with scattered confrontations across the border worlds. Small colonies that had once traded openly with alien neighbors found themselves cut off by patrol ships flying the Council's banners. Some of those ships fired warning shots, others demanded surrender. For the first time in centuries, humans living far from Earth were reminded of what it meant to be alone. Messages of distress echoed through the void, some answered, others lost in silence. Every one of those cries fueled the growing rage that now burned through humanity's veins. On the colony world of Haldus, farmers turned their fields into fortifications. They had little more than mining tools and old rifles, but when Council troops landed to seize control, the colonists refused to yield. The fight was short, brutal, and left scars deeper than the ground itself. Though Haldus eventually fell, word of the resistance spread fast. Across the colonies, the story became legend, humans who had no chance still choosing to fight. To many, it was a symbol of the Council's cruelty and humanity's resolve. To others, it was a warning of the terrible cost yet to come. Back on Earth, leaders gathered in secret chambers beneath the capital. The command had been given, but unity remained fragile. Some argued the Council would break apart under the weight of its own lies, that patience would bring allies back to the human side. Others pressed for immediate strikes against Council strongholds, believing hesitation would only tighten the noose. Each voice clashed with another, and though the debates ended with plans drawn, mistrust lingered in the air. Betrayal had come from outside, but the fear of it rising from within never left the room. Among the fleets orbiting Jupiter, captains drilled their crews harder than ever. The ships were fast, their weapons untested, their armor unproven. Pilots practiced maneuvers through the swirling storms of the gas giant, weaving through lightning as if preparing for the battles ahead. Many of them were young, too young, their hands trembling when the drills ended. Yet in the mess halls, their voices grew louder each night, filled with talk of striking back, of proving the galaxy wrong. Some clung to hope, others to anger, but all carried the weight of the unknown. The Council, for its part, moved carefully. Official broadcasts declared humanity guilty of crimes against galactic order, painting Earth as reckless and dangerous. Yet behind closed doors, council members whispered to one another about fears they would never admit in public. They had expected humanity to bend, to beg forgiveness. Instead, they saw factories producing new weapons, fleets gathering in silence, and whispers of a warship unlike any seen before. The more they tried to suppress humanity, the more they feared what resistance might unleash. For those living on the outer edges of human space, fear was sharper still. Every passing shadow could be a council scout. Every strange signal could mean invasion. Families slept with bags packed, ready to flee to safer worlds, though none truly felt safe. Among them, a quiet unease spread. If warships did come, who would defend them? The fleets were stretched thin, and the council knew how to strike where humanity was weakest. Yet some colonies refused to simply wait. They formed militias, secret groups, training in the wilderness or beneath the seas of their worlds, preparing to resist however they could. Rumors also began to spread of humans turning against their own. Some ships went silent, their crews never heard from again. On Mars, whispers told of agents working for the Council, sowing discord among the people, sabotaging supply lines. The enemy was not only in the stars, but perhaps among them already. Fear sharpened suspicion, and suspicion made trust fragile. Humanity needed unity, but unity was the hardest thing to hold when betrayal had already cut so deep. Among the scientists, the work was relentless. Labs once devoted to peaceful research now poured their efforts into weapons, shields, and strange devices whose effects even their makers did not fully understand. Every day brought breakthroughs, and every breakthrough carried questions. Would these inventions save humanity or destroy it faster than the Council ever could? The answers lay in the future, but the present left no time for hesitation. In the shadows of all this, another story moved quietly. Traders who once carried grain and metals now carried whispers, messages passed in secret between systems. Some told of alien species who doubted the Council's decision, who believed the punishment had gone too far. Others spoke of factions within the Council itself beginning to fracture under the weight of fear. These whispers gave hope, fragile but dangerous. If humanity could hold long enough, maybe cracks would form wide enough to break the unity of its enemies. But hope built on rumor was as dangerous as despair, and no one knew which way it would fall. And then there was the matter of the unknown fleets. Scouts reported them again, shadows that moved where they should not, signals that vanished too quickly to trace. Some believed they were mercenaries hired by the Council. Others thought them pirates waiting to profit from chaos. A few dared to suggest something older, something hidden for ages now awakened by the noise of war. No one could prove any of it, yet the fear lingered. If another enemy was waiting in the dark, then humanity's fight was not against the Council alone. The first great clash had not yet come, but everyone felt it approaching. The air across the colonies was heavy with anticipation, like the sky before a storm. Children asked when the battles would begin, parents whispered prayers they had not spoken in years, and soldiers prepared for orders that could arrive at any moment. The galaxy itself seemed to hold still, as though even the stars were waiting for humanity's next move. But inside that silence, questions twisted without answer. What had truly driven the Council to turn? Was it fear of humanity's rise, greed for resources, or something hidden far deeper? If the rumors of ancient power within human space were true, what would it mean when the truth finally surfaced? And if the unknown fleets lurking in the dark were real, whose side would they take when the first shots of the greater war rang out? For now, the only certainty was uncertainty itself. Humanity stood ready, divided yet united, wounded yet unbroken. The command had been given, and the path ahead was war. But every step on that path carried shadows, and in those shadows, betrayal and mystery waited like blades. The Council believed they had struck first. Humanity knew better. The real beginning had only just arrived, and the fire they had lit was spreading faster than they could ever control. The stars ahead were not just a battlefield, they were a crucible. What came out of it would not be the same humanity that went in. And as the fleets tightened their formation, as colonies braced themselves, as whispers of hidden truths grew louder, one reality became clear. The true war was only just beginning, and no one could predict how deep it would cut before the end. The first thunder of real war came not from a declaration, but from the silence before it. Human fleets were scattered across the void, positioned on the edge of council-controlled space, waiting for orders they knew would come. Every ship was tense, every crew member moving through their tasks with quiet focus, their minds balanced between fear and determination. They knew the council would not wait much longer. The blockade had already tightened. The broadcasts of condemnation grew sharper with each passing day, and then came the reports, whole armadas moving toward human space. The moment everyone had dreaded was now pressing in from all directions. On Earth, cities glowed with unnatural light as factories worked without rest. The skies above were filled with transports hauling supplies, military craft streaking through the atmosphere, and defense grids powering up with hums that shook the ground. The people below lived under a shadow heavier than any war in history, for they knew the fight ahead was not just for territory, but for survival. Families prepared for evacuations they hoped would never come, while underground shelters opened to receive thousands at a time. Earth itself had become both fortress and target, and everyone felt the weight of that truth. Out in the colonies, things were different but no less desperate. Some worlds had already endured council probes, small fleets sent to test their defenses. The losses were painful, but every clash hardened resolve. Miners who once pulled ore from dead moons now loaded weapons into hidden bunkers. Farmers trained with rifles at night, their fields turned into trenches. Whole communities whispered the same words, "We will not kneel." Still, the fear remained that the Council's armadas would arrive in overwhelming force, sweeping aside the courage of small worlds with the cold certainty of numbers. In orbit around Jupiter, the fleets gathered in secret formation. Shipyards hidden among the planet's storms had built vessels no one outside human command had ever seen. They were not large, but they were designed to strike with precision, to wound where the Council thought itself untouchable. Commanders spoke in hushed tones, for even here they feared spies. Every plan was whispered like a prayer, knowing that if one word leaked, the entire strategy could unravel. It was not only the enemy's fleets that worried them, it was the betrayal already sown deep in their ranks. Who could be trusted when loyalty was so fragile? The Council armadas themselves loomed like storm clouds across the void. Reports flooded in, fleets the size of whole nations, ships carrying weapons untested even by human science, supply chains stretching farther than the eye could imagine. For all their numbers, though, there was a strange uncertainty among them. Scouts noted their formations shifting too often, their communications carrying tension rather than confidence. Humanity's defiance had unsettled them more than they would admit. Yet when such power gathered, fear alone would not stop the fire to come. Within human command, the arguments had reached their sharpest point. One faction demanded a strike deep into Council territory, a blow so daring it would shatter enemy morale before the true war began. Another argued for defense, to hold ground and make the Council bleed for every inch, believing attrition would break their unity faster than rash attacks. The debates raged night after night, and though decisions were reached, no one left those rooms certain. Every path was dangerous, every outcome uncertain. Yet hesitation was no longer an option. The Council's fleets were already moving closer. For the soldiers aboard the ships, life narrowed to drills and whispers. Young pilots lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining their first combat run. Engineers checked systems over and over, each time fearing they might have missed something vital. Medics prepared for injuries they could not yet see. And still, in the quiet hours, they spoke of home, of oceans on Earth, of winds across Mars, of skies above far colonies. They fought not for conquest, but for those memories, those pieces of humanity that no betrayal could take away. But shadows thickened. Reports came of sabotage, fuel depots exploding on the edge of Saturn's rings, communications relays silenced by unknown hands, patrols vanishing without a trace. Some believed the Council had infiltrated human ranks. Others whispered that rogue elements within humanity itself were striking for reasons unknown. Fear spread faster than truth, but the result was the same. No one fully trusted anyone anymore. That mistrust made every silence heavier, every order more suspect. The enemy outside was clear, but the enemy inside remained invisible. In the midst of it all, whispers of a new weapon refused to fade. Some said it was a warship, larger than anything humanity had ever built, hidden deep within a secret shipyard. Others claimed it was not a weapon at all, but a technology older than the Council itself, something uncovered in the ruins of forgotten worlds. Whatever it was, the Council seemed desperate to keep humanity from using it, for their broadcasts grew sharper each time the rumor surfaced. The more they denied it, the more people believed it. Was this why betrayal had come so suddenly? Was this the real reason humanity had been cast out? The questions gnawed at commanders and citizens alike, but answers never came. Then came the warning. Human scouts, running silent in the deep void, caught sight of the first waves of the Council's true fleet. Thousands of ships, vast beyond measure, cutting through space like blades. Their destination was clear: the border colonies first, then Earth itself. The sight of them was enough to freeze blood, yet the scouts reported something else as well. Strange vessels moving alongside the armadas, ships no one could identify. Not Council designs, not any known species. Silent, angular, and moving with precision that made even veterans uneasy. The unknown fleets were no longer rumor. They were real, and their purpose remained hidden. Word of the sighting spread through human command like fire. Crews rushed to battle stations, fleets shifted formation, and worlds braced for the storm. Yet in the heart of all this movement, tension tightened like a knot. Humanity was ready to fight, but the weight of what was coming pressed harder than ever. It was not just the Council they would face. It was betrayal, sabotage, unknown enemies, and secrets too deep to see clearly. The stars grew restless with the noise of engines, the heat of weapons charging, the whispers of soldiers waiting for orders. Across every channel, silence hung heavy, the calm before the first shot. Humanity's leaders spoke in measured tones, urging courage, reminding all that survival depended on unity. But in their eyes, even through the screens, there was fear they could not hide. They knew what was at stake. They knew that when the first strike came, nothing would ever be the same again. And still, the great question lingered. Could humanity truly stand against the Council's endless fleets? Could one command, one act of defiance, hold back the fire about to descend upon them? Or was something else moving in the dark? Something far more dangerous than even the Council's betrayal. As the armadas drew closer, the tension reached its breaking point. Humanity stood at the edge of its greatest trial. Every ship ready, every colony waiting. Every heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. The first shot had not yet been fired, but the war had already begun in spirit. And when that first shot did come, it would decide not just battles, but the future of every world that dared to call itself human. The armadas closed in, the blackness of space thick with engines and signals, and humanity braced itself for the firestorm that was sure to come. Yet just as the fleets prepared for contact, a new message cut across every channel. It was not from the Council nor from human command. It came from somewhere in between, from a source that should not have been possible. The voice was calm, steady, and carried a weight that silenced entire crews as they listened. It declared that the Council was not the true architect of this war. Humanity had been betrayed, yes, but not by those who sat in the chambers of the Council alone. A deeper hand was moving the pieces, guiding both sides toward destruction. The voice ended before its origin could be traced, leaving behind only a single chilling phrase. The war you prepare for is not the war you will fight. The impact was immediate. On every ship, crews exchanged uneasy glances. Commanders demanded answers. Analysts tore through signal data, desperate to find the source. Some argued it was Council propaganda meant to sow doubt before the first clash. Others swore it was human, a traitor's voice meant to fracture unity. But there were those who whispered something else, that the unknown fleets moving in the dark were not mercenaries or pirates, but the true enemy, and the Council itself was nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. This second betrayal, or the suggestion of it, spread like poison. In the chambers beneath Earth, leaders shouted at one another with new urgency. Some demanded that the fleet strike immediately at the Council before hesitation weakened resolve. Others urged caution, insisting that the mysterious transmission proved humanity faced a danger greater than the Council alone. The debates grew sharp, the air heavy with fear and anger, yet no consensus came. Humanity was poised on the edge of the greatest battle in its history, and now it faced the possibility that even victory against the Council might mean nothing. Meanwhile, reports from the outer colonies grew more disturbing. Entire outposts had gone silent without warning. No explosions, no battles, only silence, as if life itself had been cut away. Scouts sent to investigate found debris, scorched ground, and signals that made no sense, as if time itself had been fractured. The Council denied involvement, but no one believed them. These attacks carried the signature of something new, something the galaxy had not yet revealed. Colonists called them ghosts, shadows in the stars that struck without warning and left only questions. If these were the unknown fleets, then humanity faced an enemy whose weapons went beyond anything they had imagined, and yet the Council pressed forward. Their ships grew nearer with each passing hour, their broadcasts filled with threats and condemnation. Perhaps they too were blind to the greater threat, or perhaps they were complicit in it. That uncertainty gnawed at human commanders, forcing them to plan for battles whose meaning they no longer fully understood. They had prepared to fight the Council, but now the horizon of war stretched wider, filled with shadows no one could yet name. On the decks of human warships, the tension was unbearable. Soldiers strapped into their stations, their faces pale under the dim glow of displays. They whispered not only of survival, but of the message that still echoed in their minds. If the war was not the war they prepared for, then what were they marching into? Still, duty held them steady. The command had been given, the fleets were moving, and hesitation was death. Whatever secrets lay behind the betrayal, humanity would discover them in fire. But fire was already spreading. On Mars, riots broke out as factions clashed over the mysterious message. Some demanded humanity stop the war and uncover the truth before it was too late. Others shouted that only by destroying the Council could safety be found. Streets filled with chaos, and for the first time since the betrayal began, humans turned their weapons on one another in open conflict. Command struggled to contain it, but the damage was done. Unity was crumbling, and the timing could not have been worse. In the colonies near the border, militia leaders received their own version of the mysterious message. The words were the same, but the signal contained hidden data, coordinates far from any known Council stronghold. When decoded, the coordinates pointed toward a dead star system, abandoned for centuries. Why there? What lay hidden in the ruins of a lifeless world? Some believed it was the source of the unknown fleets. Others whispered it was the location of humanity's rumored secret weapon. Either way, it was bait, and someone wanted humanity to chase it. The higher stakes became clear with every hour. Humanity was not facing one war, but two. The open conflict with the Council and the silent shadow war against something far older, far stranger. The betrayal was no longer a single wound, but a web of lies, and at the heart of it, something was watching. Something had waited for this moment, and now it was moving its pieces into play. Still, the Council armadas bore down, their weapons hot, their engines burning like suns. Humanity had no choice but to meet them. Fleets spread into formation, weapons charged, orders prepared. The silence stretched long and thin, every heartbeat a drumbeat of dread. The mysterious voice had planted doubt, the unknown fleets had struck terror, and yet the Council remained the visible enemy. Humanity could not hold back any longer. As the first Council ships crossed into human space, alarms rang across every station. The war had arrived, but beneath the fire and thunder of the approaching battle, the greater question remained. Was this fight the true enemy, or only the opening act of something far worse? The stars themselves seemed to shiver as engines roared and weapons armed. Humanity was about to step into the crucible, but whether it would face only the Council or something darker waiting behind them, no one yet knew. And in the silence before the first shot, a single thought pressed on every heart. The betrayal was not finished. It was only beginning. The first shot split the silence like lightning across a dark sky. Council warships opened fire, their beams cutting through space with merciless precision. Humanity's fleets answered with a roar, missiles streaking from hidden bays, railguns hurling slugs faster than light. The void became alive with fire, the first great clash unfolding in a storm of chaos. Ships burst into flames, hulls cracked apart, and crews shouted orders as alarms screamed around them. Humanity had stepped fully into war, and there was no turning back. At first, the Council pressed its advantage. Their fleets were massive, their numbers overwhelming, their weapons honed from centuries of dominance. Human ships burned, torn apart in brutal exchanges, and yet they did not scatter. Smaller, faster, more desperate, they struck like wolves, hitting the Council at weak points, vanishing before a counter could come. Coordinated attacks cut through supply lines, precision strikes crippled larger vessels. Every loss was a wound, but every wound inflicted on the Council carried weight greater than its size. On Earth, the world watched the battle unfold through transmissions and fragments of reports. Families crowded around screens, hearing names of ships they knew, seeing flashes of fleets burning in silence. Fear pressed on them like a weight, but pride rose with it. For the first time, they saw humanity not as scattered worlds or divided voices, but as one people standing together. Even as death spread through the stars, something stronger was being born. Yet in the midst of the chaos, the second betrayal revealed itself. From the shadows beyond the battle, the unknown fleets emerged. Silent, angular, alien in ways that felt wrong to the eye, they moved with purpose, ignoring council and human alike. At first, no one understood their aim, until their weapons lit. Strange beams, colors unnatural, tore through space, ripping both council and human ships apart without hesitation. Panic spread. These were not allies of the Council, nor mercenaries. They were something else entirely, something older, and they had waited until both sides were weakened before revealing themselves. The mysterious transmission had been true. The war humanity had prepared for was not the true war at all. The Council, too, now faltered. Their fleets, once united in crushing humanity, broke formation as commanders struggled to understand this new threat. For the first time, the Council hesitated, and that hesitation cracked their power. Human commanders seized the moment. Against every instinct, they sent a message not of defiance but of unity. They broadcast across the battlefield, offering temporary alliance with the very fleets they had just fought. For a breath, silence followed, the galaxy holding its breath as centuries of mistrust hung heavy. Then, astonishingly, some Council ships ceased fire, not at humans, but at the unknown fleets. A fragile, desperate truce was born in the middle of fire and ruin. Together, they turned on the true enemy. Human speed and daring, Council numbers and firepower. It was a storm unlike any battle ever fought. The unknown fleets struck hard, but for the first time they faced resistance from both sides. Human railguns tore holes in their formations. Council warships unleashed devastating barrages, and still the shadows pressed on. The battle became a frenzy, every moment a struggle against extinction. On board the flagship of the human fleet, commanders realized something shocking. The unknown fleets were not limitless. Their attacks, though devastating, began to follow a pattern as if guided by something deeper. Analysis revealed a signal at their core, pulsing through every vessel like a heartbeat. If the source of that signal could be destroyed, the fleets might fall apart. The coordinates pointed not to a Council world, not to human space, but to the dead system revealed in the hidden message. It was a trap, yes, but also a chance. Humanity's fleet broke off a strike group, hurling through the void toward the dead star. The Council protested, fearing betrayal even now, but they had no choice but to hold the line against the shadows. Humanity's ships plunged into the graveyard of worlds, past broken moons and shattered planets, until they found it, a massive construct, ancient, buried within the husk of a world long forgotten. It pulsed with the same unnatural light as the unknown fleets. The battle outside raged, but inside the construct, boarding teams descended. Soldiers fought through twisting corridors of alien design, their footsteps echoing against walls that seemed alive. At the heart, they found what they sought, not a machine of war, but something stranger. A beacon, transmitting across the stars, controlling the unknown fleets. And within it records older than any known civilization. Humanity had not been betrayed only by the Council. The Council itself had been betrayed, manipulated by forces that had waited for eons to turn the galaxy against itself. There was only one choice. The beacon had to be destroyed no matter the cost. Explosives were set, and with them the final act of defiance was written. As the charges blew, the construct split apart, and across the battlefield the unknown fleets faltered. Their ships flickered, their weapons dimmed, and one by one they fell silent, drifting lifeless in the void. For a heartbeat, silence returned. Humanity stood bloodied but alive. Council fleets, battered and broken, still outnumbered what remained of human forces, yet they did not fire. In that silence, both sides understood the truth. They had been pawns in a war not of their making. The Council had condemned humanity to weaken it, but in doing so they had nearly doomed themselves as well. Humanity had exposed the greater enemy, and in doing so had changed the balance of power forever. But just as relief began to spread, the unexpected twist came. Among the wreckage of the beacon, fragments of its records were recovered. They spoke of cycles, wars repeated through ages, civilizations destroyed again and again. Humanity had not stopped the threat, only delayed it. The shadows would return, and when they did, they would not strike with surprise, but with knowledge of how humans had resisted. The war was not over. It was only paused. Back on Earth, victory was declared, yet it was victory filled with unease. Humanity had survived the Council's betrayal, fought alongside its greatest enemy, and uncovered a threat beyond imagination. The stars were safe for now. But in the silence of the void, somewhere in ruins deeper still, another beacon stirred. And when its light reached the galaxy, the fire would rise again. Humanity had won its place among the stars, but what it had inherited was not peace. It was a warning. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the noise of war. The void, once filled with fire and destruction, now held drifting wreckage, human ships, council vessels, and the broken hulks of the unknown fleets. For the survivors, it was not victory they felt first, but the weight of survival. Alarms had gone quiet, weapons powered down, and voices that once shouted in panic now spoke in whispers. Humanity had endured, but the scars ran deep. Every ship carried stories of lives lost, sacrifices made, and choices that could never be undone. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Crowds filled the streets, some in celebration, others in mourning. Families wept as names of the fallen were read, while others embraced with relief that their loved ones had returned. For the first time in history, humanity had stood against the galaxy and not been broken. The betrayal of the Galaxy Council had nearly destroyed them, but in the end it had revealed a strength no one could deny. Humanity was no longer a junior member of a fragile order. It had become something greater, something feared and respected. The Council, too, was shaken. Their fleets had suffered alongside human ones, and their illusions of dominance had cracked. Many of their leaders were forced to admit the truth. They had been manipulated, their fear of humanity turned against them by forces older than both. In the aftermath, they sent envoys, not with threats, but with uneasy offers of peace. It was not friendship, and it was not trust, but it was recognition. Humanity had forced its place in the galaxy, not by pleading for acceptance, but by standing firm when everything was against them. Yet even as treaties were drafted and borders redrawn, humanity could not forget the beacon. The recovered fragments of its records told of cycles of war stretching back to civilizations long vanished. The unknown fleets had not been an isolated threat, but part of something larger, something patient. The beacon humanity destroyed was only one voice in a chorus spread across the stars. The truth was sobering. The war they had fought was only one battle in a struggle that might last for ages. The shadows would return, and when they did, the galaxy would need to be ready. In the colonies, life began to rebuild. Fields once turned into trenches were cleared and planted again. Children who had hidden in shelters stepped into the sunlight, looking at skies no longer filled with the fear of invasion. But the memory of what had happened would not fade. Stories of the Haldi's farmers who fought with tools against trained soldiers spread across the stars, becoming symbols of defiance. Their sacrifice was remembered, their courage a reminder that even the smallest worlds had stood firm. Humanity carried their memory forward, a promise to never let betrayal erase the worth of those who resisted. On Mars, the riots that once divided the people gave way to reflection. Those who had argued against the war now stood beside those who had fought it, acknowledging that survival had required every voice. The divisions had not vanished, but they had softened, tempered by the knowledge that in the end, humanity had survived together. The colonies began to see themselves not as separate, but as part of something larger. The betrayal that once threatened to tear them apart had instead bound them more tightly than before. For the soldiers who returned from the front, peace was uneasy. They carried with them memories of fire, the sight of comrades lost, and the knowledge that the fight had only been delayed. Some struggled to adjust to life without alarms and orders, while others devoted themselves to preparing for the next war, training new generations who would one day face the shadows. They had learned that unity was humanity's greatest weapon, and they refused to let that lesson fade. And in the halls of science, the work continued. The weapons built in desperation were studied, refined, and hidden away for the battles yet to come. But alongside the weapons, researchers focused on something else, the fragments of alien knowledge left behind in the beacon. It was dangerous, yes, but within it lay understanding of technologies far beyond human reach. If the shadows were to return, humanity would need more than courage. It would need to rise faster than ever before to learn what ancient civilizations had failed to grasp. Humanity's survival depended not only on strength, but on wisdom. The greatest reflection, though, came from the people themselves. The betrayal of the Galaxy Council had hurt deeply, but in a strange way it had also been a gift. It forced humanity to grow, to see itself not as dependent on approval from others, but as capable of standing on its own. The Council's attempt to weaken humanity had instead revealed its greatest truth, that humans are most dangerous when cornered, most united when tested, and most unyielding when told to bow. That was the legacy of the war, and it was a legacy no one could take away. Still, the twist of fate lingered. Humanity had survived betrayal, had destroyed the beacon, had forced even the Council to acknowledge them. But the fragments left behind spoke of another truth. The shadows had been watching for eons, waiting for the galaxy to tear itself apart, and they would come again. The next time, humanity would not be surprised. They would be ready, not as a fractured race of scattered colonies, but as one people forged by betrayal into something stronger. As the fleets returned home, battered but alive, the stars seemed quieter than before. Yet in that quiet, there was a promise. Humanity had faced betrayal, faced extinction, and emerged not broken but hardened. They had not chosen the war, but they had chosen how to fight it, and that choice had reshaped the galaxy. No longer would humanity be seen as outsiders. No longer would they wait for the Council's approval. They had carved their place with sacrifice, with unity, and with fire. And so the story ended not with peace, but with preparation. Humanity looked to the stars with clear eyes, knowing the shadows would return. But this time, the galaxy would not face them divided. This time, humanity would stand ready. And when the next betrayal came, it would not find a people unprepared. It would find a fire already burning, a fire no darkness could extinguish. That was the lesson left behind. Betrayal can wound. It can shatter trust. It can even bring war, but it cannot break those who refuse to bow. Humanity had been betrayed, but in that betrayal, it had discovered itself. And though the stars still held dangers yet unseen, one truth was certain. The galaxy would never forget what happened when the Council betrayed humanity, and humanity answered with one command.